On this week's episode of Ask Dan, I talk about Windows 10 on cloud, what it is and what I expect from it, and whether or not there'll be a Surface Studio refresh in 2017. Stay tuned. What do you think about Windows 10 Cloud? So earlier this week, Mary Jo Foley at All About Microsoft wrote a little bit about Windows 10 Cloud. It turned out this is going to be another SKU that we're expecting from Microsoft. It's basically another version of Windows 10. What's the difference? Well, this doesn't run Windows 32 apps as far as we know. That is, it only runs UWP Store apps. So that sounds familiar. It sounds a lot like Windows RT from years ago. Now, Windows RT was never formally canceled by Microsoft. It's been trickling on for a few years, but we've never seen any products released with it. Microsoft's going to reportedly position Windows 10 Cloud against Google Chromebooks. That is, these will be low-cost PCs and tablets that can compete against Google, who are making a lot of inroads in the education sector, at least in the United States market. Now, the question is how well this will do, how they're going to sell it to consumers. If that is even going to be their attempt, we do not yet know. Nor do we know the time frame for release of this. We expect it probably around RS3, that is in the fall 2017, but it could be pushed back even later. We're not 100% sure. This may also be tied in with Windows 10 on ARM. We'll just have to wait and see. Why would Windows Cloud be a success this time around compared to Surface RT? Also, how is Windows 10 Cloud different from Windows 10 Mobile? Really good question here. Years ago, Microsoft with Windows 8 launched two versions. There was an RT version and a desktop. RT could not run desktop apps. It was a little bit confusing to the consumer because there was a desktop presence there and there was even full Office. So it looked like it could run desktop apps, but it could only run store apps. Combined with the fact that the store was still very new, they were co-launching these two things at the same time. There weren't a lot of apps available, and I think that led to the demise of RT. Now, RT's development basically kept on continuing, which is why we're seeing here. But the question is it much different here in 2017? I would say the store is in much better position. There are over 600,000 apps now. By the time this launches, there should be even more. Now, it remains to be seen how they're going to position this. Will this be a consumer device? Will this be education only with limited SKU availability? I do see a lot of benefits here, though. These devices should be thinner, they should be lighter, they should get better battery life, and that's an important thing to sell to people. Regarding the second question, as far as what's the difference between it and mobile, well, mobile has a whole different shell right now. That's what we're used to when we're seeing on a phone. Now, mobile also works differently than Windows 10 desktop, and so there's going to be some fundamental differences here about the shell. Mobile also has the telephony support for phones and cellular and SMS connectivity, which Windows 10 proper does not yet have. However, we are expecting those two things to start to overlap going to 2017 and 2018, but Microsoft has to share their plans yet with us. When do you think the first Windows 10 on ARM devices may be released? I expect sometime in the fall we'll start to see the first Windows 10 on ARM devices. This seems to be contingent upon two things. Windows 10 Redstone 3, along with Qualcomm Snapdragon 835, which Microsoft said is what's necessary to run this. We don't have firm dates on when that processor comes out, and I expect Samsung to be the first to get it out there with their new Galaxy S8 device. So probably don't expect us until the fall, but who knows, we may start to see little bits of it earlier this summer. Do you think that a refreshed version of the Surface Studio will be released in late 2017? It's kind of a funny question considering Microsoft has barely been able to get the Surface Studio out to consumer hands in the United States early in January 2017, and yet we're already talking about a Surface Studio 2 refresh. There is no firm information on this device, nor what their plans are. My guess is they're going to roll it out for quite a few months. They're going to let it saturate into the market, eventually expand it, hopefully to Europe and the UK. I do not expect to hear anything about a Surface Studio 2 or Surface Studio refresh until sometime in 2018. Microsoft seems to be very conservative with releasing updates for these devices as far as hardware changes. They seem to be more on an 18 to 24 month cycle, which considering their price points, I think is probably a good idea, but I would not expect to see a refresh anytime soon. But Microsoft operates so secretively that who knows what's actually happening there. If Samsung and LG beat Microsoft to the market with a foldable phone, will Microsoft still release a Surface phone? All right, so really good question there. Foldable displays are expected to hit the market sometime in 2018, and it won't be brought to you exclusively by Microsoft. That is because the companies behind it, Samsung and LG, each having competing technologies, are likely to bring their own devices to market. And Apple is supposedly also experimenting with foldable displays. In fact, there are quite a few buyers waiting to purchase this stuff to sell it to consumers. I expect a wave of these devices coming from multiple companies basically in 2018. So where does that leave Microsoft? Well, Microsoft's proposition here is always going to be the strongest because they have full Windows 10. It's a desktop OS that can run Windows 32 apps as well as UWP apps. They have graphic supports. They have inking. There's a lot more of an ecosystem built there. Let's not underestimate Samsung though. They've been very successful with Android and making their own software and cornering that market, so they could be a strong competitor. Still, I would suggest that Microsoft has a strong card here to play with having a full Windows 10 operating system that matches your desktop, your laptop, and eventually a kind of phone device. So I do not think Microsoft would change their plans dramatically. I've mentioned before that Microsoft seems to get better with each Surface device, so I expect whatever comes out for Surface Mobile in the future should be very impressive, but it'll have some exclusive technology in there as well besides the foldable screen. So that does it for this week's episode of Ask Dan. Remember, if you have a question, use hashtag AskDanWindows on Twitter or use our email askdan@windowscentral.com and I'll try to answer yours next time. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, give us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Take care, everybody.